today our topic of discussion is going to be the risk-based monitoring approach and the data management connection. And our learning objectives will be, I'm going to give information that will be able to recognize the rationale regarding risk-based monitoring and illustrate the active role that CDM is expected to exhibit in this approach. List the potential CDM reports to assist in identification of data aberrations and interpret the way forward for future CDM activities. So when we look at risk-based monitoring, we look at risk versus quality. And what is risk? Well, risk is by definition someone or something that creates or suggests a hazard. And we all have been able to identify all different kinds of risks in our daily life. In this particular instance, we're looking at the risk that must be defined and maintained across all stakeholders, so that when we're getting together as a study team, we're going to look at the potential risks that can affect our study. And we want to provide oversight and ensure the adequate protection of the rights, welfare, and safety of human subjects. And that is really the goal of anything that we do in clinical research, that welfare and the rights and the safety of human subjects is paramount. And that's like the highest. You look at the definition of what is the remit of the Food and Drug Administration, and the welfare and safety of human subjects is right up there. And then also we're looking at the quality and the integrity of clinical trials data. And the data quality is so important when we're looking at our deliverable. As data management, we have to deliver a quality database, but also when we're looking at risk versus quality, we have to look at the inherent risks, be able to identify them, and then have a risk mitigation plan on how to deal with them so that it doesn't compromise the quality. So by definition, what is quality? And that is basically the degree of excellence. So a system's property that must be built into an enterprise and cannot be achieved by oversight or monitoring alone. It's an inherent, your checks and balances, all of the things that we do in data management are built into the overall processes, and really we have to implement those inherently in what we're doing. The quality needs to be maintained through the life cycle of the product, so the life cycle of the study. And the evaluation of risk to quality would be based on scientific knowledge and connected to the protection of patients. So we're looking at, what would be the risk, let's say, for example, if we add more visits to the study? What would be the risk if we increase the number of assessments? Those types of things. But risk-based monitoring, and this is where a lot of clinical operations folks get hung up on, let's say, remote monitoring and risk-based monitoring. But the risk-based monitoring is really that adaptive approach to monitoring clinical trials that directs the focus and the activities to where the areas of the greatest need have the most potential to impact patient safety and data quality. And we're looking at this approach and this determination of risk and the mitigation of risk, because now as a risk-based monitoring is not necessarily, quote unquote, a trend, an option, because as some of you may know, the ICH E6 revision 2, the Good Clinical Practices revision, really embraces that risk-based approach for clinical studies. So it's not necessarily an option anymore. It is really an integral part of how we are expected to conduct clinical trials. So the FDA definition of risk-based monitoring, it reflects a modern risk-based approach that focuses on critical study parameters and relies on a combination of monitoring activities to oversee a study effectively. For example, the guidance specifically encourages the greater use of a centralized monitoring method where appropriate. And this is where we'll go through the definitions of what would be remote monitoring, centralized monitoring, etc. So when we look at risk, and as we mentioned, what could possibly go wrong? And if you ever let those words leave your lips, you can be in deep trouble, because when you think that things can't get any worse, sometimes it happens that it does get worse. But when we look at risk, it's a situation involving the exposure to danger and the possibility that something unpleasant or unwelcome will happen. A person or thing regarded as likely to turn out well or badly as specified in a particular context or respect, or a person or thing regarded as a threat or a likely source of danger. So, looking at these definitions or descriptions of risk, we can maybe extrapolate how some of these definitions can move into a scenario that we may have experienced in some past clinical trials that we've conducted or anticipated risks on a new study that's starting up.